All right. Well, thank you so much, Daryl, Kev, Nathan, everyone at DLTV for having me today. Yeah, really honored to be presenting and working with you guys over the course of this year and into next year. My name is Tim Edwards. I'm Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at LifeJourney. I'll just start out just giving you a little bit of background on LifeJourney and as well as my own personal journey, and then I'll sort of set the context for the discussion today and hopefully share a couple examples of what we've seen happening in schools and some of the programs that we're supporting, and as well as other resources that are available. So just a little quick background on LifeJourney. We were formed in 2012 in Baltimore, Maryland, and our co-founder and CEO at the time was working with students, I'd say underprivileged students in inner city Baltimore. And he was mentoring them on, becoming an entrepreneur, just sort of some aspirational things and looking at different types of jobs and careers, pathways and such that they could pursue in the future. And, when he asked him that time-honored sort of question about what do you want to be when you grow up? He got a mix of answers. A lot of students would say that they wanted to be a doctor. Many would say they want to be a lawyer. Some of the kids in the class would say they wanted to be a professional athlete, a football player, or a basketball player. But what Rick realized at that point was that no one really said that they wanted to be a data scientist or a penetration tester or a malware analyst. So those sorts of things weren't part of the vocabulary of the students at the time. And another thing that he realized was that a lot of students didn't have access to mentors and didn't have access or vision to role models. So he created LifeJourney to help really solve those two fundamental gaps that he saw. So LifeJourney it's primarily a technology platform. So we're a cloud-based technology that allows students to explore different career paths in STEM, and we focus quite a bit on cybersecurity. So that's the base of our program is that cloud-based technology. I'll talk a little bit about that in the future. And that really enables students to explore the life journeys of today's leading professionals. In addition to the LifeJourney online platform, we also do a number of different engagement activities for students. This would include webinars, career fairs, running workshops, presenting at teacher conferences and that sort of things, doing webinars like this with DLTV. We also have our own professional learning course called Cyber Teacher that we run. We've run about 6 of them this year within the COVID context, and I'll show you a little bit about that in the future. That professional learning program is designed to build teacher capability and knowledge in cybersecurity. So that's I'll touch upon the ADT Cyber Experience. That's one of our modules on the LifeJourney platform. That's our latest one and the most relevant to the discussion today. These programs are free for teachers, students, and schools to run. We get our funding from the private sector and the government, so we don't charge schools anything to use this. And that's about it. So I talked a little bit about LifeJourney. You might wonder, you might hear my accent a little bit. You might wonder where I'm from and what my life journey is all about. So I'll just give you a quick breakdown of that. And I think that sort of sets the context for later, talking about these different career paths and sort of breaking down these different roles and reverse engineering what it's like to work in the STEM or the technology or the cybersecurity fields. But yeah, I was born in a mountain town in Colorado in snowfields. You can see in the top right corner there, it's one of the big ski town called Steamboat Springs in Colorado. My parents moved to Northern California when I was a really small little baby. I spent most of my life there, grew up there, just outside of Sacramento. Did a Bachelor of History at California State University, Humboldt. Also known as Humboldt State University. It's home of the redwoods, those massive, gigantic trees, which you can see in the picture. After undergrad, I did a stint as a Peace Corps volunteer in Uganda. Spent 2 years there. I've also spent some time living in Malawi. Did a lot of work in international development, public health, in education. I taught English in secondary, English as a second language to vocational students in Uganda during my time as a Peace Corps volunteer. Did some work on immunizations. After I got back, I did a master's degree at Syracuse University, which will now be, I will share an alma mater with President of the United States, which I'm very excited about. After that, I moved to Washington, D.C. and started working for an organization called STEM Connector. And STEM Connector is sort of a consortium of different organizations, all concerned about promoting STEM education and looking at different best practices and helping to look at different funding models and programmatic approaches to addressing the STEM pipeline. So I worked for STEM Connector for about 5 years in DC, and that was really at I think it's kind of the beginning of the STEM sort of movement in the United States with President Obama, probably around 2011. We really saw that take off, and a lot of people adopting that that framework and looking at different models. And yeah, I was exposed to a lot of different ways of thinking during that time, and really was able to build quite a strong network. Then in 2015, I got married, and my wife's company wanted to relocate us to Australia, which we put our hands up for. And as a part of that process, I connected with Life Journey, which was a partner with STEM Connector in those early days. So yeah, I've been working for Life Journey the last 5 years, and do a lot of different things, but primarily manage the programs that we run in Australia, including the ADT Cyber Experience, which I'll get to in a second. So yeah, that's a little bit of background on myself and Life Journey. I think you'll see this, you've seen this slide or a version of this statistic or this idea that, the jobs of the future, we don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. So how can we prepare students for jobs that haven't been created yet? And I think that's a fundamental question that we all sort of, and especially as teachers and school leaders, look at addressing when we're thinking about how we educate and how we prepare students for the future. So this, I think this does really hit at the core of cybersecurity, as I imagine it will continue to be of great importance and a sort of a fundamental or a foundational part of these jobs of the future. So just looking at the cybersecurity field, you could call it an industry if you want. I like to phrase it, and a lot of other people like to phrase it as an industry horizontal. This is a massive area for growth for the Australian economy in Victoria and all across Australia and also globally. It was about, in 2016, is about 2.2 billion in revenue. And that's projected to grow by, I think, around $4 billion over that 10-year period. There's also a huge demand for cybersecurity professionals, estimated around about 10 to 12,000 over the next 10 years. And that number is quite more substantial for global figures. I think people even put it up in the millions of unfulfilled jobs in cybersecurity. And these really cut across a number of different industries. So I don't think you could put cybersecurity into, just strictly a technology field. But you'll need cybersecurity employees across a wide swath of Australian industries. So anywhere from medical technology to mining to advanced manufacturing to space is another one, sort of an emerging topic here. Food and agriculture. Cybersecurity helps enable and protect those industries in order for them to grow. And so cybersecurity the talent in that field will always be needed. And so even if you're not working as a penetration tester or malware analyst, for example, you're still going to need to have a fundamental understanding of cybersecurity as an employee in the future workforce. I also like to think about it within this framework of smart cities, right? Because I think a lot of Australian cities, particularly Melbourne, they're really framing themselves as one of these smart cities, which is the idea of using technology or leveraging technology to improve life and improve livelihoods, improve health, reduce things like carbon emissions, and just make things smarter, more efficient. But without a sound cybersecurity, without a strong cybersecurity resilience, without strong frameworks, none of these things can happen, because if you don't have a fundamentally strong cybersecurity framework embedded within these things, then they're subject to a large number of different threats, and also technical problems that could arise and really jeopardize people's health, well-being, their livelihoods, as we've sort of seen over the last 3 months. So often I find framing the smart cities, that cybersecurity enables economic growth, enables the fostering of smart cities, as a good jumping off point for students and teachers in understanding this. Recently, you would have seen the Australian government, and each of the states would also have their own framework and their own strategy for cybersecurity. But the federal government, the Commonwealth government, recently released an updated strategy. So this is a whole of government strategy produced by the Department of Home Affairs that looks to address, how we build cyber resilience. Now, a huge, gigantic part of this is how we enable the education system to develop a cyber-skilled workforce. So this was an update to the 2016 strategy. I'd encourage you to have a look. I think if you just Google Australian Cybersecurity Strategy 2020, you can find this. The 2016 version had a lot on education and skills and that sort of career focus, but this one is quite a bit more developed. And you can see on these bullet points of different areas that they're trying to address within this. One of them is increased professional development opportunities for teachers. So that's just at a Commonwealth level, right? And like I said, the states would be coming up with similar frameworks and doing their own specific things. But yeah, it's good to see this growing, and the importance of it is really becoming quite strong. Now, if you look back a few years ago, when we were trying to talk to teachers and students about cybersecurity, it seemed like a bit of a niche topic. But in 2020, I think people are starting to grasp it. Schools are starting to understand that this is important. Not only that, that a school builds their own cyber resilience from different types of threats, but also that they prepare students for these jobs of the future, being a malware analyst or being, a doctor that's quite aware of their own patient's record and things like confidentiality and privacy. So this chart this was created by the Australian Cybersecurity Growth Network. Just shows a little bit of the, again, this was I think this is from 2019, but looks like a shortage of about 12,000 jobs across the economy over the next 10 years. So that's just looking at the specific workforce shortage. So if you think about the STEM workforce shortage, this is a part of that, but it seems to be a particularly pronounced shortage, or an acute shortage, I might say. And then if you look at average annual salary, people that are working in this field are making a significantly more or a higher salary than traditional IT occupations, and then nearly double of just standard all occupations across the entire economy. So that can be another selling point for students. You can make a lot of money, but that alone can do it. But as you can see as I go into my presentation a little bit more, is really being able to make a difference which is important for a lot of students today, is a huge part of the appeal to this field. So if you looked at the different characteristics of cybersecurity professionals, these are sort of I would say non-cognitive skills. Some people might say soft skills. I've heard employability skills. There's a whole host of different names, but maybe non-technical skills. But looking at being a continuous learner, being persistent, being perceptive, being inquisitive, and having the ability to communicate are all really important characteristics for people working in the field. So I'll just go, I talked a little bit about the Australian cybersecurity strategy. That's put out by the Department of Home Affairs. And Department of Home Affairs looks after the policy side of cybersecurity for the Commonwealth government. Now, the organization that has sponsored our teacher professional development and our ADT Cyber Experience program is the Australian Signals Directorate. Now, I said that Home Affairs looks after the policy side, ASD looks after the operational side. So the Australian Signals Directorate is part of the Australian national security community. They look after a range of different things. Cybersecurity falls under their mandate. You can see this 3 different areas that they focus on. Really collecting information. So looking at organizations, groups, criminals, etc., foreign nation states that might be looking to harm Australia, looking at collecting information from those entities in order to better protect Australia. Then also this protection mandate, the second bullet point here is really about understanding the cybersecurity threat and providing advice, strategies, and helping to mitigate the impact of cybersecurity threats for all Australians. That would be Australian communities, educational institutions, businesses, government entities, state governments. They really look after Australia in terms of protecting it from cybersecurity threats. So if you think about the top gun of cybersecurity professionals in Australia, they come from the Australian Signals Directorate. And then they also do a number of other activities that would be on the disruption or offensive cybersecurity capabilities. That means actively going out and trying to break, disrupt the networks and systems of adversaries. And you could think about nation states, as I mentioned, criminal organizations, terrorists, conducting operations that disrupt those things that are might be harming Australia. There was an example of this recently with the collapse of the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, and ASD had a big hand in disrupting that, and really was able to, an ethical hacker from behind a computer in Canberra was able to disrupt and take down the communications capability of the Islamic State before the coalition and the ADF was able to actually minimize that threat on the ground. Some really cool things that they're doing. The other examples of ASD's work in terms of protection, the parliament was recently, the parliamentary networks in Canberra were recently hacked by a foreign state actor. So really figuring out, what's happened, what's been lost, what information has been stolen, and then trying to find out, how that happened and how to prevent it from happening in the future. There's also countless examples of hospitals, universities, school systems, businesses. I think Toll, the logistics company, was the victim of a cybersecurity threat recently. So ASD is going to provide information and advice on how to clean those sorts of things up. So this will get me to my last point here, which is a recent announcement by the government. Now, this was in end of June, but the Commonwealth government's pledged $1.35 billion to build cyber resilience in Australia, and that also creation of another 500 cybersecurity jobs at the Australian Signals Directorate. Now, this is just what the Commonwealth government is doing. Victorian state government, I know, is putting a lot of effort and resources behind this. And similarly, private sector organizations, the major telecommunications firms, the banks, different logistics companies, Qantas, Virgin, you name it, any of these large private sector organizations are putting a lot of money into this, and you will be able to find jobs in those places no matter where you look. So you could work at a university, you could work at ASD, you could work for, Telstra or Optus or CBA. These jobs are everywhere. I'm just highlighting ASD because that's what I know best. And again, I would consider it sort of the top flight destination for cybersecurity talent. So I think I'll just stop there. I'll just stop there and just see if there's any questions or any sort of things that caught your attention, and we can maybe go from there.
Tim, there wasn't any questions in the chat. However,
okay.
The one sentence that caught my was on a slide where it says the ASD works between a slim area between impossible and I can't remember the other one.
Yes.
It's a pretty tricky business. Difficult and the impossible. That's right. Thanks, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great joys of my teaching career was actually teaching a student, Matthew, who now works at the ASD as one of the fortunate young people who is tasked with the responsibility of trying to break into government departments.
Oh, okay.
And so he was an extremely talented young man, and he knew more about the content of the subject than I did, and was quite happy to show me what I should be teaching him.
Yeah, no, that's quite good. It's great to hear that you know someone that works there, and they're obviously doing some really important work. That's somewhere between the difficult and the impossible. I would just say that there's a lot of pathways into ASD, and I'm not sure, how your friend made it in there, but there's tons of opportunities for work experience. They have a secondary work experience program for high achieving year 11 and year 12. So I've helped a couple of students get into that. That's one pathway in there that students go and spend I think it's a week-long intensive work experience in Canberra, working alongside cyber professionals and solving problems and doing really cool things like that. There's heaps of internship programs from universities and TAFE that internships, cadetships, apprenticeships that students can take advantage of to get into there and really sort of become part of this national defense, really.
Yeah. One of the other questions I had is around as a career option for students. A lot of the students begin thinking of that at about the year 10 level. In terms of at year 10, the students need to select their electives, and which leads them in Victoria into their VCE subjects.
Right.
And two of the main subjects that the students could undertake that would provide a direct pathway into that career trajectory would be computing analytics, and there's also software development. So two separate subjects, but very high level subjects. And yet they seem to be very, and I can't recall the numbers, but in terms of the amount of students studying at that level is very small. It's not a huge cohort of the students. So if you looked at history, you look at some of the mathematics subjects, you look at physics, chem, all of those would be a lot higher in terms of student numbers who take them on.
So yeah, that's a really interesting point. And we've actually worked with a couple of teachers that and I'm not an expert on the VC curriculum, but I understand that I think 2020 or 2021, there's a more implicit connection between cybersecurity and those senior level classes. So it's a lot, the word cybersecurity and the areas within the curriculum are much more tied. There's much better connection now than there was a couple of years ago for those two areas that you mentioned. And of course, software development, data analytics, those fields are highly valuable to ASD. I would say the core of the workforce really is coming from an area of technical expertise in computer science and digital technologies. However, I would venture to say that approximately half of the jobs, I think that ASD probably employs 15 to 20,000 people. Don't quote me on that, but I would say about half of those employees while they have a technical background, they're not directly working in a technical capacity every day. And there are heaps of jobs that are non-technical that ASD is after in areas like languages, communications, psychology, business, just being able to understand business, because a lot of what they do is provide expertise to businesses, government, etc. So a lot of it isn't as technical as you think. Yes, they do have, hardcore penetration testers that are going in and breaking systems and people that are hacking into networks of, criminal organizations. But there is a much softer side to that. And a lot of the jobs are in those non-technical fields. So you don't have to be a computer scientist. You don't have to get a degree in IT to work in this field. And that's one of the points that I wanted to drive home today, is that a lot of the people that work there today, they didn't set out on a pathway to get a Bachelor of IT. A lot of them have come through TAFE. A lot of them have, done a certificate. They've gone through that TAFE pathway. They've done an apprenticeship or a cadetship and found their way to a job at ASD. So, yeah, you don't have to study IT and computer science to work there, or in cybersecurity in general. You don't have to study IT or computer science. Yes, that is an important part. And then I would say the other facet of this is you don't need to study a university degree either. And I think those are two common misconceptions about this field.
That's really pertinent, because Nathan asked the question, or he just makes a statement around the fact that teachers can sometimes struggle to sell the senior digitech and computing subjects. But the information that you've just providing in terms of, I guess the soft skills are important, but I hadn't even considered that language, if you want to if you want to get some understanding of a computer system or what people are doing, then you really would be, you would need to be able to speak in the language and read the language of the people that you're trying to uncover their motives. Deb is in the chat and she asked a question too. Are there any video resources that speak to students about their careers that you know of and what might be involved? And I don't think it's potentially not something that this is what Deb says, it's not something many teachers would be familiar with as a career. And I guess they would, if you're a career teacher, one of the first things you might think of is that to work for the ASD, and you would need a computing background. But this has been a terrific expose of that myth, if anything.
Yeah, sure. Are you still able to see my slides?
Yes, if you go back and present now, we've got your full screen at the moment.
Okay. I have the sort of a list of resources here that, and I'll start off with the ADT Cyber Experience. So this is the program that Life Journey and ASD have developed together. So this is a free online program. It's run on the Life Journey platform. It was created by ourselves in ASD. It looks at 5 different roles within the cybersecurity field at ASD. So an intrusion analyst, a penetration tester, an incident responder, and a malware analyst. So this program takes about an hour to complete for students. It can be facilitated in the classroom or done by individual students. And to talk about different types of videos, so each of these mentors within the program has about 5 or 6 videos talking about what career pathway they took, guidance to students, skills that they use, certain projects that they work on. So it's sort of an experiential learning tool for students to understand what it's like to work in cybersecurity. That's our program, but I will show you. We are doing a webinar next week with DLTV, which is sort of looking at, a few people are doing it like a TED Talk presentation on their specific field. Let me just get down here. The Australian Computing Academy also has developed some really amazing resources for teachers in cybersecurity. These are, the first batch of them was for 7 to 10, I think. They've also now developed a primary resource for the younger kids. So this is another wonderful resource that I'd encourage you to check out. There's again, heaps of videos of people that are working in the field talking about what they do. And then the third resource that I would have a look at is Careers with STEM. They just created a new magazine that just focused on cybersecurity. I think they launched this last week. I've had a quick look at it. It's really good. So those are a few of the resources. The Digital Technologies Group at University of Adelaide has also launched a new MOOC on cybersecurity and awareness. So this kind of mixes, not mixes, but it covers both the cyber safety element and the development of cyber schools. Or cyber skills, sorry. I haven't had a deep look into that, but the stuff that they produced in the past has been really good. So I'd imagine it's nice.
Yes, I'd certainly recommend the CSER. I've looked briefly, I've got to say briefly, at that one on cybersecurity, and it looks like it covers a lot of fields, and it's a terrific thing. Natasha writes, yeah, and Deb backs that up and says that if at any time, I'll take this opportunity, if there's any time someone would like to open their mics and have a discussion, then that's fine. Natasha also comments and says she's also interested to hear that there are options for students who are not completely techie, and that she has several students who are interested in the social science HCD side of digital media. And they would be pleased to hear there are options.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, maybe you mentioned the cyber security webinar you're doing for students next week. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you will cover off on, about the broad idea that it's definitely not just for technical,
Yeah,
user.
We will definitely cover that, as well as the pathways. If you go to I'm not sure if I can share the. Natasha, just for students at Victoria University, there's a variety of, so again, yeah, just speaking on the ASD side, they have a variety of different pathways for tertiary students into ASD. Those, I think it's, so they have an internship program, which is for university students that have finished their second year. They have a cadetship program for university students that have finished their first year. And then the apprenticeships program is for TAFE students that are, I think, have done 1 year of a related topic, which I'm sure digital media would probably fall under that. But that's run through the Digital Transformation Agency, the DTA.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, all of those applications, they start opening up around April, May timeframe of next year. So yeah, I'm happy to point you in the right direction. But yeah, tons of opportunities for tertiary students, and we work with a lot of different universities in helping to bridge this gap. And we work with, there's one example of University of Western Australia, and we've just started working with them recently, but ASD is now open for their internship program, which is kind of like their flagship tertiary program. It used to just be a technical stream, so they were just looking for technical people. Now they've opened up what's called, I think it's called a business services stream for this internship program, and they're taking students that are studying commerce, some that are studying communications. I'm sure that there's some that are studying digital media and marketing, those sorts of areas. So yeah, it's those opportunities and pathways are starting to become more developed, and I think that would be similar for other government entities at the state level and at the Commonwealth level, and also private sector organizations.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be taking up your offer. Thank you.
Oh sure.
And I'll also be encouraging my students to attend your webinar, as Daryl was encouraging me earlier to do.
Okay, yeah. Welcome. We'd love to have them.
Oh, thanks.
So the whole idea of I guess the cybersecurity part of it is really important, and it leads us into the whole notion of where this actually begins. And I just wanted to explore that idea with people. It's all very well to think about it as a senior secondary or a university type approach, but in fact, the whole notion of cybersecurity begins when we're talking about our prep students. We're talking about our really young students and how they use their digital media, how they use their social media, how they approach the use of their passwords, sharing of passwords. All those sorts of things begin really early on. And is there anyone else in that field out there that can offer some experience with that area? Not necessarily you. I'm talking about people in the webinar that might be in that area. I know schools. There's a lot of schools that use the Alana Madeline Foundation programs. There's a lot of schools that get involved in that sort of part of it. But yeah, it's a thing that needs to be, just for your personal cybersecurity needs to be brought to the fore.
So, Tim, it's Kev here. I've listened to you talk a few times, and I'm always fascinated by this as a topic. But I always remember, I'm sure it was you told a story about a young girl, just talking about kids coming in out of left field, but a girl who was working as an intern or something, who had a musical background, and it turned out her pattern recognition was so much superior to many other people that she got quite a high job within ASD unexpectedly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might have been me, but I don't recall it specifically.
Might have been. Maybe I'm just making it up.
No, I think
I've either read it somewhere, but somebody in the cybersecurity area who was working at a fairly lowly job but got involved, but was an excellent musician, and because of that left-right brain pattern recognition stuff, did very, very well in the cybersecurity field in terms of recognizing patterns and what was going on. So may not have been you, but feel free to tell that story from now on.
I will. No, I would say you did bring up an interesting point. It can be a really, and now I forget the organization that's doing it, but there has been a very, and I don't know if anyone's teaching in this field, but students that are on the spectrum, and people more generally that are on the spectrum, have been prone or identify as a population that can see patterns and can see different things that other people have sort of maybe naturally tune out. So there has been a lot of work in terms of working with kids that are on the spectrum and showing them this pathway. I believe it's ANZ Bank that has done something around this field. So that is somewhat related. But yeah, I'm sure music would be a very similar area. There was one anecdote that I would like to share, and we've done a lot of work with Mount Waverly Secondary College in Mount Waverly. We work with the head of technology there, and they're a heavy user of LifeJourney. But there was one anecdote of a student there who was in year 12. I think she's not gone on to university now, but she had her heart set out and her mind set out and her sort of inspiration set out on studying law at university, and had never really thought about cybersecurity as a particular topic or an area of interest. And she ran one of our programs, our cybersecurity programs, and then did subsequently develop an interest in looking at the intersection of law and cybersecurity, and hopefully taking that up at university. I think she's at Melbourne Uni or La Trobe now. But yeah, I think opening those sorts of doors and understanding that there's a cross section and that there's an intersectionality of these different fields, and that you can still be a lawyer and have a focus in cybersecurity or work in cybersecurity. You can work in privacy. That's another big area that's sort of converging with this field. So yeah, that's a good example. And I'd really highlight Mount Waverly Secondary College. I think they've done quite a good job in terms of integrating cybersecurity into their topic across the school.
Abir makes a comment around the idea that children are into technology from a very young age. So whether you're techie or not, cybersecurity or just awareness is very important. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole idea that it's a specialist area, it's been a real revelation to me. Thank you. That it's not a specialist area, that there's a lot of things that can cover off or join that whole cybersecurity field. Is there anyone else, while we're here, we're nearly at the time where we would normally finish. Quite happy to stay around if people are happy to stay around. Is there anyone else that would like to open their mic, have a discussion, or...
Tim, I just had one thought. I know I've been doing a fair bit of reading lately around, what are the big trends in technology and where are the overlaps? And obviously, cybersecurity, big data, big overlap. Mm-hmm. But is there much work being done around AI and cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think it is. I would say that there would be a big overlap between those areas. I think I've heard a few experts actually sort of scoff at the idea that there's a direct connection right now. I think that connection is there, but people haven't really, companies and that sort of thing haven't really understood exactly what that means. But yes, certainly, I think if we look at AI becoming an increasingly integral part of our lives, that the security of those systems is going to have to be taken into account. Now, whether you can leverage those two different digital technology areas, I think that's the part that's misunderstood. But yeah, I think in the future it will be. Right now, I don't think it's defined yet.
Right. Thanks, Tim. So we're probably drawing to a close, Daryl. Yeah, I know you're probably throwing a couple of words, but Tim, I would really like to thank you for today's presentation. I think it's a very relevant topic out there, and I know you're doing great work with kids, and really like what LifeJourney's been doing. So thank you again from DLTV.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kev and Daryl and Nathan and everyone at DLTV. It's a pleasure being on with you. One thing I didn't mention, we talked a little bit about cyber safety if you're looking for resources on that, I'd highly encourage you to check out the eSafety Office of eSafety. They've got tons of resources on that for all different age groups. So another great resource. But yes, thank you, DLTV. Really appreciate the time. And yeah, please follow up with any questions. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn or connect via email, etc.
Absolutely, Tim. I should have mentioned that one. That's my absolute go-to in terms of e-safety. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's perfect.
Perfect. So thank you very much. And again, thank you for everyone for your attendance today. It's been terrific. And just a reminder that this recording will be available on the DLTV website in about 10 days. I think if you'd like to share this with your colleagues at school or your colleagues at university or your colleagues in general, I think they'd find it really informative. So thanks again, Tim. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.